for a podcast. Mike, welcome back to the podcast. Uh, I really appreciate I really appreciate your energy. Mainly because you've decided to join me in this. First of all, and then
Love it.
secondly, because you know, I as I'm getting older, um, I find so much value in gaining knowledge, especially from men of faith, older men of faith. That is of deep value to me, across the board. And I have my convictions, but I am valuing that more and more. Um, Particularly, probably, in my father recently passed. I think I value it more even now, when sometimes that important male figure sort of like leaves your presence a little bit. So
Yeah.
so
Hey,
yeah, appreciate
Larry, it's always a pleasure to be with you, and my
yeah.
sympathies. I've experienced a father passing as well, and there's probably not a talk I give that I don't reflect upon the lessons I learned from him, and I usually bring that forward in most of my talks, and so I'm with you there, and one of the aspects I think as we mature in life,
Mm,
uh, we realize and that life is not a solo journey.
right.
You need others along the way, and those others, might come in and out of our life for a short time. They might be there for a long time, but we all need others that can inspire us, others that can share great information that can help us be a better version of ourselves. And so it is so important to have those people in our life and recognize those individuals in our lives, no matter what type of time frame they walk alongside of us, so to speak, on our pilgrimage of life.
Maybe that's a great entry point and segue or topic to bring into the space. Um, like for you, who who did your father represent to you? Can we just go down that path there? And I'm curious about one thing. Like, when your father passed, how did that change things for you as a man? Yeah.
Yeah, great question. And my father was a what I consider a successful businessman. He had businesses that did well. He had businesses that failed, but he was in that upper echelon uh, of running businesses and in large companies, and and of course, he wanted me to go into business. I wanted to go into teaching and coaching, but he supported that. But there are a variety of lessons he left with me. And first and foremost, no matter what you do, give it your best shot. Not that you're going to be guaranteed success, but give your best shot and be in that arena. Go be willing to step forward because you're never going to be successful living on the sidelines.
Mm,
And the other aspect that I think is very important is no matter what you're doing, make sure you give back to your community wherever you're living. He believes strongly in service. Matter of fact, his management team that reported to him, and it was a private company, so he could probably do this, but in their contracts, was actually an aspect that you had to volunteer in some form or fashion in the community.
oh,
That
nice.
could that could be, coaching a little league team. That could
Mm,
be, being part of a board or a group involved with a church. It didn't matter. And he himself, here's this executive who, was on a first name basis with the mayor of a large city and various business
mm,
people. But at the same time, he he spent a number of years as the president of a Catholic elementary school PTO. Okay. Now, normally those positions you find some housewives, nothing against them, but people of that nature. And here is this highly respected executive in a city of, almost between 200,000 and 300,000 people. He's an elementary school PTO president. And then at the same time, he is helping on an airport commission, so he was always actively involved with giving back, along with the fact, okay, he's trying to run businesses. And I think, a combination of the mindset of be your best, go ahead and be in the arena, knowing that results aren't guaranteed. And then at the same time, make sure you're giving back to the community. I think those two lessons have forever been ingrained in me, taught to me through his work. And like I said, he's been gone since 1999. So they still live inside of me. And it's probably why I do a lot of things that I do, and have done throughout my life is by his example, his lessons.
Yeah. That's the epitome of being a human being. Is there anything that pertains to about manhood that you learn from him directly or indirectly?
You talk about manhood, and there's and my father was not one of those emotional people.
Okay.
It's very common, of course. He was born into the Depression. Okay, so whatever that, you could conjure up all those images, but he really believed in bringing a presence, being strong for those around you. Not to be perfect, but to be strong, and knowing that, again, things aren't always going to go as planned, but still be strong. And I think that was a part of manhood that he brought forward. Hopefully I've taken that along with maybe putting a little bit more of an openness to love and to others. And not to say my father didn't love, he did very strongly, but it wasn't like a part of the verbiage from his upbringing. And so I think that strongness that is something I am most appreciative of in terms of manhood. And what was interesting is, and even more than manhood, I say, is being part of being a human being, being a good human being. And the other part of what I believe he really brought forward was the aspect is do it the right way. And he was a little bit of a pioneer, so to speak, within his businesses where, in a great part of his career, we were living back in the mid 70s, moved to the southern Indiana. So we're in the South. I mean, there's a big difference between southern Indiana and northern Indiana. And he believed in doing things the right way, no matter what others. And so there was a lot of racism in our community. And he wanted to rise above that and say, I'm not, I'm going to recognize that the color of the skin of a man does not matter when it comes to finding good people. And he would be he was criticized for bringing, a multicultural, multiracial executive team together.
Wow.
But his reason was he believed it was the right thing to do. It was the right way to be a human being and to be a man. And he was convicted to it. He was not going to let what people who were born and raised in the South, sometimes, you had either side of the railroad tracks. He believed the railroad tracks shouldn't be there. Let's bring it together.
Mm,
And he was not afraid to do it the right way.
mm. Um, with regards to your relationship with him, um, did he do things like give you hugs, or was that not something that he did because he was not emotional? Like, what was the nature of your like human interaction with him?
You know, no, there were not a lot of hugs. I'm going to
Okay.
be very honest. Not that there were no hugs, and probably real late in his life before he passed. And basically, see, I'm the same age my father was when he passed away.
Mm,
Okay, so
how old are you?
I'm
Mm,
67 years old.
mm,
So
mm.
he was like a month away from turning, or a few months away from turning 68
Wow.
when or 69 when he passed. So, I mean, we're right in that same age group. And hugs were not a big part, though they were not uncommon per se, but it wasn't a big part of life. But what he did do is, and the good and bad, he would sit there at the kitchen table and basically, whether it's myself, my brothers, my sisters, at times he would just call one of us to the table, so to speak. And he'd sit there and he would engage in conversation, ask questions, but you felt a presence, an absolute presence that everything else was not important at that time. You were the most important person right
Mm,
then and there. When you sat with him at that kitchen table, his presence was there. And that I will always remember. And that's where some of the greatest lessons came. He would share his experiences or his philosophies
mm.
in those discussions, those
Yeah,
conversations.
I love it.
And he was not worried about else was going on in the house. He was not worried about a phone ringing. He was present. And while the hugs might not have been there, you felt that presence, that
Yeah,
connection in those times.
yeah. Did you do anything? Did you how what traditions did you keep, and what traditions did you not keep as it relates to the what gets passed on,
Yeah.
good and bad?
I hopefully have strived to bring that same presence, to be in conversation, to sit
Hmm.
down and spend time with my own children and with others. And then I hopefully have added. I've been a lot more open and using the word love,
Okay.
telling people I love them,
Okay.
and a lot more open for the hug part of it. Now,
Okay.
when you go outside of family, you know, I'm very cognizant of not everybody is a hugger. Okay. and then I think we all need to respect that. But I'm a lot more open in terms of the use of the word love, but yet I want to make sure I carry on the tradition of providing people a presence when engaged in a conversation, and to share messaging. My father was very willing to share messages of how to live a good life. And he was very honest about, yeah, there's going to be ups and downs and there's going to be failures in life, but your presence for others and your care and concern from others should never waver.
Mhm.
So that's probably the good and bad. And is like I said, it's nothing that I thought was bad he did. I just want to maybe do some other things with it.
Um, you said at one point that he wanted you to go into business, but you chose a different path.
Yep.
Describe that experience. Was that a lighthearted experience, or was that like a tumultuous experience?
It was more, hey, here's a way, I think it was more of, I believe you can do this, do the things, some of the things he has done, had done at that point. And so he wanted me to really consider that. At the same time, my mother, who was a nurse, very successful, was a nursing supervisor and so forth. I think deep down she would have loved to see me become a doctor, you know, and the like. But in the end, they were both very supportive to how I wanted to go forward. And with the caveat, if you're going to do this, be the best you can be. And don't forget, no matter what you're doing, you're in a people business.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. So, a side note, I'm a hugger. So eventually,
nothing wrong with that.
if or when I see you in person,
yeah,
I'll welcome that hug.
There you go. So do I.
And then on another side note, I think I want to meet in person with you down the road and do an in-person interview if you're interested.
Oh, would love that.
So that'll be a hoot. So I always have to go through Dubuque anyways, in order to get to Madison, which is my hometown. So
got it.
So your father lived to be about 67. When he was 67, you were about How old were you when he died?
I was in my early 40s when he passed.
Okay. So you were a grown man. He was an archetype. Did you have kids at that time?
Yes,
I'm assuming. Okay.
Yep. I had 3 kids when he passed, and my oldest was in 8th grade, I believe. Or actually, no, she was actually a freshman in high school.
Okay.
And that was very tough on her, because we were fortunate for a few years there towards the end of my father's life. And he passed away from heart disease. And my oldest daughter had developed a relationship with my father as well. All my kids had a relationship, but she was probably a little bit more mature and older. So their relationship was very, very close. And that was a tough when the day we had his funeral. That was really tough on her, and so forth. It was tough on all of us. And I tell people when I gave my father's eulogy, that was probably the toughest speech I ever had to give. To this date, the toughest speech I had to give, and probably the one talk where I had more of a speech written than I've ever done prior to that and since. And that was just so I could get through it, I think, more than anything else.
Yeah. So your father, there's that interfamily dynamic of grandfather's there for grandkids.
Yep.
He has presence in your adult years. Do you go to him for advice? How does the dynamic change? Or just talk about the transition.
Yeah.
Let's go through the developmental transition. You go all the way from teenager to middle adult to adult in a career to adult with family. What does that look like as far as a young man's relationship with his father in those stages?
Early in life, prior to what I would call the teenager years, I probably idolized my father. I looked to him as strength. I looked to him as, there's somebody I want to follow. What lessons is he doing? How does he communicate with people? I mean, I really paid attention to what my father was doing, how he was living his life. And And then you get to the teenage years, and it was kind of, and maybe a somewhat of the typical rebellious teenager. I was really getting, as I got in my teenage years, I was really involved as an athlete. And my father had never been an athlete. Now, I
Mm.
came to learn later in life that he had rheumatism and some aspects where he was unable to do a lot of
Mm.
activities, so to speak. So he was never exposed to it. His father had been a factory worker and so forth, was never involved. So I was kind of, creating a new avenue with athletics.
Mm.
And now he was very supportive, but uh, it was definitely different. And then came the kicker because, and I share this story often. I remember when I was probably, in those late middle school years, that seventh, eighth grade type of standpoint, and maybe in my first year, a little bit of high school. My father used to sit at the kitchen table, and he was a workaholic. Okay,
Okay.
and he'd be sitting there drawing lines, and then he'd taking other people, he'd drawing some lines, and I had no idea. None of us had any idea what he was doing. Well, he was working for a company at that time, and what I found out that he was actually doing was seeing how there was a new technology that was coming out that was, in essence, UPC codes. And he was creating how UPC codes was going to work into labels.
Wow.
And this was what he was working on. We had no idea what he was doing. And well, what happened was, the company he was working for, the main company, decided to put him in charge of this plant in Evansville, Indiana. We were living at the time in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and so he went down there for a year. During my entire sophomore year of high school, he was basically gone the majority of the time, and he comes back. And we kind of knew what was going to happen. We were either going to move to Indiana, or we were going to move to New York, where the headquarters was for this, the major corporation. And so between my sophomore and junior year of high school, I moved from Milwaukee to Evansville, Indiana. Now, at 16 years old, I was not a happy camper. You're taking me out of, I was a quarterback of the football team, I thought I was in love, of course, I had a girlfriend, I was running track. I was doing all these things that all high school kids do. And you're going to take me away from my friends in my environment. And so I was not a happy camper. So I spent almost 2 years where I was not very happy with my father. And then I came back to Wisconsin to go to college.
Mm.
And I still probably wasn't real happy, but we started to mend our relationship. And as I got further along in my career, or college career, and then into my professional career, then him and I started having more and more talks about, what does it mean to be a leader? What does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to look to be successful? How do you overcome failures in life? And we would share. And I remember, I was part of that generation. I remember about 5-6 years into my career, the Apple, personal computers came out. And here's my father. I brought this computer home, and, he goes, well, how do you do this? What can you do this with? He displayed to me the essence of being the lifelong learner. And he took this up, and he started creating these spreadsheets that he used in his business, in his committees he was a part of. And it was amazing. And so then, we went from, me idolizing him to being not happy because I was moving to back to not only probably a little bit of idolization, but more of here is a mentor. Here is somebody that I can bounce ideas off. Here is somebody who's willing to say, hey, Mike, you should really think about this right now. And so we had a great relationship as things progressed. And then as his health declined, we'd sit down and I mean, Larry, he laid out, he told me, hey, here is everything that you will need, because I think he knew he wasn't going to live very long then. Here's everything you will need to help make sure your mother is taken care of.
Now, were you oldest? I mean, how many?
I was the oldest. I was the oldest of 5 children. By the time my father passed, actually, one of my younger brothers had been killed in a car accident. Back probably 12 years or so before my father passed. So I had a younger brother, and then I had 2 younger sisters. So yeah, I was the oldest of 5.
Okay. But so in his passing, he's sort of handing down the mantle of responsibility to make sure your mom is taken care of. Long story short.
Absolutely, and through that time, and my brother, one of my younger brothers is an attorney, still an attorney. And so he was involved with some of this and he still helps. He's the one that he double checks all the documents all the time, whether it's from accountants or so forth for my mother. You know, I have both of my younger sisters now live right there. Either one with my mom and one, my mom is still alive at 93. And you know, we all have, my one sister and I both have had power with the medical records and so forth. And she's actively involved because they live right there. I'm 9 hours away from my mom. And, you know, so everybody has a hand in it, but yeah, at the beginning there, at that time, it was like, okay, Mike, here it is. Here's what you need to know. You know, I've just kind of, hey, we're all going to be a part of this. I don't want to have, you know, we all share in this responsibility. So, and I'm pretty sure my father would have wanted it that way anyways.
Yeah. After his passing, how does that shift for a man?
You know, when he passed, I think one is, all right, what was he responsible for? What was his concerns? Where was his care? And of course, first and foremost was with my mother. And so I think you need to embrace that aspect. How do you do this in the way she wants it done? But how do you carry that on? And then, you know, one of the aspects is, and my father was one of those people who's very well connected. But one of the things he taught was make sure how you live your life. And when you have the opportunity to speak with others, serve others as a speaker, make sure you're leaving a message they can take forward. He really believed that we have a responsibility on this earth to leave messages for those who are coming up, for those yet to come into this world, and make sure those are lessons for good, for the common good. And that was really important to him. And I believe that mindset has lived with me throughout, since, yes, before he even passed, but since he's passed, that's become even more important in my life. Make sure that I am leaving a message, and it's a message for the positively impacting the common good. No matter how big of an arena that might be, it might only be within a family, it might be in a community, but you're still leaving a positive message.
How does one process grief? Do you recall how you processed the grief or the loss? Was it because there was an anticipation? I mean, he had already set the tone that things were happening. It looked like everybody sort of knew what was going to happen at some point. It
Yep.
looked like there's a transition where people knew, where everybody knew it was going to happen.
Yeah. I grief is a unique time span, and I don't know if grief ever completely leaves us. It's I witnessed my father. I mean, when my brother passed when he was 24. I was basically 28 at the time, and getting ready to turn 29, I guess. And witnessed how my mother, and my father processed that grief. And to lose a child, I empathize with anybody who's had to experience that, and it was not easy. And there were tears, and there was hugs, but at the same time, what I experienced from them, witnessing how they handled it, was how do you get back in the arena, and how do you go onward and forward, and be thankful for whatever time you had with that person. And so when my father passed, I still remember the day, Larry. My father had a surgery, and the surgeons had, it was kind of like, all right, you're in this state right now. We can just kind of keep you going, and who knows, it could last for a while. You could be around here for a year, 2 years, whatever. But we also could take this chance with this surgery. And my father, and knowing my father, I knew what he's going to say. Let's take the chance. I want to live more fully if possible. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But I'm okay with that. And I remember he had the surgery, and basically, he never came out of he came out of surgery, but he never really became conscious again. And I remember about a day and a half, 2 days after the surgery, I remember, as we were there and we'd gone into this room, and, I remember we're leaving the room, and for whatever reason, Larry, I stopped, walked back to my father's side, and I kind of looked at him and said, Dad, we're going to be okay. And we will go on no matter what. And we went back out to the waiting room, and 5 minutes later, the nurses, they came to us, said he had passed away. And to me, there was grief, there's hugs, there's tears, but it was more of, all right, I just promised him we were going to be okay and we would go on. So I need to make sure we do that as a family. And that we were going to continue his legacy going forward. And that was how I handled the grief, to be very honest with you. It was more of what promises, what is my role in here. Were there tears? Yes. Were there tears? It was a broken heart? Yes. But from his lessons of what he brought forward, and a commitment, a conviction to taking that forward, that really helped me navigate the grief.
How do you feel even now? I mean, does grief affect? I mean, grief affects people a lot of different ways. I don't know if there's a masculine way or feminine way of dealing with grief. I don't know whether men deal with it differently. I think it all hits us differently, just depending on how we were raised and our experiences.
Yeah, I don't think there's one specific answer here. Do I think about my father basically almost every day?
Interesting.
And part of the reason is, probably about 10 years before he passed, he had given me a plaque that he had in his office, and since he gave me that plaque, no matter where I have lived, where I was working, and that plaque was the first thing that went up on my office wall. It was the last thing that ever came down. And when I moved and came back home and basically work out of my house now, that plaque still hangs in my office. It's the first thing I see when I walk into my home office. It's the last thing I see because it hangs right by the door, and so that I never forget about it. And the messaging, it's a plaque. It's Teddy Roosevelt, Man in the Arena, and that's how my father lived his life.
Wow, I love that
And
poem.
yeah, and I use it. I basically finish almost every talk I give with those words,
Wow.
because it's not the critic who counts, nor the
Yes.
person who tells how the strong ones stumbled or the doer
Yeah.
deeds could have done them better.
Yes.
The credit belongs to the person who is actually in the arena,
Wow.
whose face is marred by dust and sweat and
Yes.
blood, who strives valiantly, who errs and comes short again and again,
Yeah.
who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, and
Yes.
spends himself in a worthy cause, and
Yes.
who at the best knows the triumph of high achievement, and
Yes.
who at the worst, if they fail, at least fails while daring greatly, so that their place shall never be with those cold and timid souls that know neither victory nor defeat.
Oh man.
Those words live inside of me. Those words keep me connected to my father at
Yeah.
all times. And those are words that I believe all of us can live our lives. We're not guaranteed anything, but how do we step into the arena? And feedback is still important, but the
Yeah.
critics, they're always going to be there. Let them be
Right.
there.
Yeah.
Keep being in the arena no matter what.
I love it. Yeah, I'm actually going. Actually, I'm so inspired. I love that poem. That hit deeply, especially as an entrepreneur. Like your dad is right up my alley. He's right. He's right up my alley. I probably would have enjoyed his presence.
Oh,
Uh,
I'm certain you would, Larry. You would
yeah,
have been you. We would have had a heck of a great time with a
yeah. I
great
would have.
conversation going.
Yeah, I would have been eating it up. I would ask all types of business advice for crying out loud. So I could see it. So I feel inspired to get that poem. I love that poem.
Yeah,
Um, so
it's a great one. The plaque, it means the world to me. And probably it was about 10 years ago. I had, because I have three daughters,
mm,
I actually replicated the plaque
mm,
for them and gave each of them a plaque. But on the bottom of their plaque includes my father's initials,
mm,
because I want that to live on, and I'm certain I know they will hand it down in their lives to my grandchildren. But I'm also thinking about, and have kind of mentioned to them. I said, you have one plaque, and like my one daughter has three children. Make sure you replicate this plaque for them as well. So make sure everybody ends up with a plaque. And we get together as family. I'll talk about the plaque. I talk about those words with my grandchildren, because I believe that's a lesson. That's part of, in essence, the Durnin legacy is those words. And
mm,
while the words, Teddy Roosevelt wrote that at a different time in
right,
this in the history of this world, I believe the words are still applicable today.
right. Can I carry on that legacy with my kids? When you were thinking of it, I was like, I should do that with my son. I love that. I love that poem deeply because it
Yep.
just talks about the the plight of living fearlessly in your environment.
Yep.
It just speaks to the doing everything that you can to live a fearless life and to go out there and become, in spite of the obstacles, in spite of it, and the danger of not doing so.
Yep.
To be that, was it to be that uh the person who never does anything. I forget how it
Yeah.
ends.
Yeah.
But
Those with the cold and timid souls that know
yeah,
neither victory nor defeat.
yeah,
You have to be in the arena. I don't know any
yeah,
other way of living.
yeah.
Life is meant to be lived.
Right,
Okay. And there's no guarantees, you know,
right,
and I don't care if you're faith-based or not. The Bible doesn't give you any guarantees. It doesn't tell you that you're not going to experience some setbacks, some challenges. They're inevitable,
right,
but you still live.
right.
That's what we're put on this earth to live and to
Yeah,
serve others.
yeah,
And take those chances, and it doesn't mean it's like, I've actually skydived, okay, done the tandem skydive,
oh my
okay,
goodness.
okay. You don't jump out of a plane without a parachute,
Right,
okay, that's a death wish,
right.
okay, but you still, when you jump out of a plane with a parachute, there's still a chance something could go wrong.
Yeah,
So, you prepare yourself, and you keep learning, and you keep preparing to continue to live a better and better life, but there's no guarantees.
yeah,
None of us have that.
right,
And but again, you're never going to have opportunities unless you're willing to step in the arena.
right.
And as you say, fiercely live.
Yeah, yeah. I love it. I love this conversation. I really appreciate. I really appreciate it. I really feel like whatever legacy your father passed on to you, I can feel that even being passed on to me a little bit, even though I'm not your family. So,
I consider everybody family, Larry. You're family, man.
oh yeah,
You and I have done enough conversations. We're family. That's
no
why the
kid.
hugs are there.
um, I got this language. I used to work at the car dealership, and one of the dealership supervisors, he would call everybody brother, and I just loved it. This was like probably about 10 years ago. I used to work at Mike Finnan Ford. The Finnans will
Gotcha.
tell you, right? Yeah, but I was mediocre to say the least. Uh, and what a brutal business. This car dealership business, behind the scenes stuff. But anyways, this one dude called brother, and I latched onto it, and I start calling everybody brother, and because it just felt like such an endearing term. And recently, I would do it, and my daughter's like 5, she's 6 years old, and I would call people brother, and she's like, "Why are you calling them brother? Are they your brother?" I said like everybody's my brother. So
There you go.
anyway,
There you go.
yeah,
Well, the great commandment
yeah,
is love God
yeah.
and love your neighbor as
As you
yourself.
said, that's right.
And, you know, I still believe if we all would heed that verse, that great commandment, if we would all heed that, just think of how much better this world would be.
Yeah, yeah, 100%, 100%. On that note, I think this is a great note to end on.
Okay.
I butchered enough of your time this afternoon, this morning,
Well,
I
I
suppose.
am certain, and I'm not trying to say anything here, Larry, but I am certain we're going to have another conversation somewhere down the road.
I can almost guarantee it. Right, keep it rolling. But even so, man, I appreciate. I want to tell you, I appreciate you sharing your energy with me.
Well,
It means more than you know, especially even now, in my own personal circumstances. I gained so much even from this, more than you know. And so I just want to take some time to just give you your flowers, man. I appreciate sort of the fatherly, mature, experienced energy that you've been able to give me even throughout the course of this podcast, and just the love. I can just feel a little bit of love and just this genuine, sincere nature that comes from you. And I don't go down this alley talking like this too often, but I just wanted to give you your flowers a little bit and tell you I appreciate you.
well, Larry, thank you so much. It is always an honor and a pleasure to sit here in conversation with you. Likewise, your energy and your compassion, your caring for others exudes in all you say and do. And for me, when I have the opportunity to be around you and others like you, I walk away just feeling blessed
Yeah.
to be on this earth and to have the opportunity to have people like you enter into my life. So thank you so much for all that.
Yeah, man. Likewise, man. Good. I definitely got filled today, for sure. So I appreciate it. I'm going to end the podcast on that note. Mike, we'll talk to you later. Mike, don't get off the podcast just yet.
Gotcha.
So give me about 1 minute, and I'm just going to talk in the aftermath a little bit. Okay.
All right. Sounds great, Larry.
All right. Come on, if you can do it. Okay.